if you're a leader, then likely you want to get things done and you want to see those things done well. Well, we've all been a part of those projects where things changed. We had well-laid plans and then everything switched up on us, and those plans were about as helpful as expired coupons. And today, that's kind of our reality. Our environment is constantly changing. And so this team, what does a team do? Do they stop following the plan once they feel like it's no longer valid? Well, do they come up with a new plan? How do they navigate this? With constant shifting, it's hard to stay in sync. It's hard to seem like we're making progress, but you don't have to just stay in this wheel spinning cycle. Your team can actually learn to navigate the complexity and the volatility of today. Because I've seen teams, they function best when everyone knows both the goal and the process. That you see effective teams, they improve over time. And they even recognize that this improvement isn't just the leader's responsibility, it's theirs. They own it together. So if you want to grow as a leader, if you want to become someone with influence, I think understanding how to apply the 3 pillars of Scrum, or really the 3 pillars of empiricism, will really equip you and your team to make a difference. I've led in many complex and changing environments. Some of the best advice I got actually was, David, you're gonna make a lot of mistakes. There's no script for what you're doing right now, so just try and make original mistakes. Don't make the same ones over and over. Learn from them, evaluate, adapt. And I think that was great advice. It didn't land well, the first moment I heard it, but as I thought about it, I realized that was some exceptional advice, because we make mistakes along the way. But at the same time, we have the ability to see those, to evaluate them, and to adapt. And that's where empiricism actually has this long track record of success, and I've seen it help teams navigate uncertainty. So let's dive in. What are these 3 pillars of Scrum? Well, they're transparency, inspection, and adaptation. Transparency, making things visible. Inspection, creating space to evaluate. And then adaptation, just encouraging growth over time. All right, let's start with the first one, transparency, making things visible. Well, if you can't see where you are, then how are you going to find your way forward? That's why it's so important that transparency provides you and your team with a shared understanding of your current reality. This transparency, though, can feel risky because it might mean admitting that something is unknown or isn't working, something's wrong. But you'll find that this honesty and vulnerability are critical to the health of and agility of any team. Scrum cultivates transparency through really 4 strategies, and I'll walk through those. The first one is that it helps you prioritize value. The product and the sprint backlogs are ordered by priority, and everyone can see that order. It's visible. There's no ambiguity about what's important. The second strategy is that there's clarity about the current reality, and that comes mostly through some of the different Scrum events. Let's look at 4 of those that help us see clarity about the current reality. Well, the first one is sprint planning. That's where the sprint starts, and you clarify the goal. The goal for the sprint is established. It's visible to everyone. Then you have visibility coming out in the daily Scrum or the daily stand-up, which is just a simple 15-minute meeting where every team member checks in and the rest of the team sees what's going on. They become aware of their current reality. Then you have the sprint retrospective at the end, where again, you're giving space and time to make visible what happened in the sprint. And then you get to evaluate and adapt, which we'll talk about more in a minute. And then the fourth event is just the backlog refinement. Again, it's bringing those new product backlog items before the team so that they can see them and get clarity about what they mean, why they're priority. So like I said, there's 4 strategies for cultivating transparency. That first one was prioritizing value, and the second one, getting clear about our current reality. Well, the third one is just a commitment regarding deliverables. And you see this Scrum, especially you see it in the sprint review and the definition of done. Both of those provide some clarity about what's expected and what's been delivered. There should never be a question of, I don't know, did that get done? Was that like really done? No, that should be clear and visible. There's these moments and these artifacts within Scrum that really push for clarity about what gets done. Then the fourth strategy is just a cadence of visibility. And we saw this some in those different Scrum events, but really each Scrum event contributes to transparency. And together, they're just kind of that rhythm of visibility, it gives visibility both to those in and outside the team. So if you want to level up your transparency in the team, here are a couple steps you can take. First, make sure you have the people. Identify the people. Do you have all the roles for Scrum defined and designated? In Scrum, this is going to mean the essential roles of a product owner, a Scrum master, development team. So yeah, there you go. Do you have the people? Second is to craft the questions. What will your team commit to asking one another in order to have visibility? I've included some questions in the description below. You can use them as is, or you can adapt them however you want. But the third thing you can do is just plan those critical moments and put them on the calendar. If you wait for transparency to just arise, it's not going to probably come. You've got to take an active approach. And a lot of it is just making the time to make things visible. Okay, that was transparency. Let's jump into inspection, which is just creating space to evaluate. So, okay, now you can see what's going on. What does the team do with this visibility? Well, in order to leverage it, they first have to understand it, and that's where inspection comes in. So evaluation isn't just for the beginning or the end of a project. It's active and ongoing. Like, think about how you drive. You don't just look at where you're going and close your eyes until you get to the end to see if you made it. No, you're continually inspecting your speed, your trajectory, the other car's speed and trajectory. You're taking all that in, and then you make adjustments, which we'll get to here in a second when we talk about adaptation. But all these small evaluations, they come together to give you a responsive and nuanced understanding of your surroundings. And the same thing is true in your project. There's this compounding power of evaluation that gives the whole team a much more real-time understanding of what's happening. And Scrum enables evaluation or inspection through 4 strategies also. The first one is bringing shared visibility. If you aren't looking at the same things, this kind of bumps back to transparency, but if you aren't looking at the same thing, evaluation is going to be fraught with misunderstanding. And the same happens in organizations. If in Scrum, you invite a larger group of people to own solving the problem, so you have to have shared visibility for you to be able to evaluate and solve that problem together. Second strategy is really to provide structure, but without over-scripting it. You know, there's quite a bit of structure in Scrum, but a lot of it is lightweight, and this allows you to have time and mental space to focus on seeing the work and evaluating it, understanding it, and not just running a process. Third thing is strengthening the team's evaluation muscle. So because practicing Scrum, you facilitate evaluation every day, teams actually get pretty strong in their evaluation skills, but that requires some strengthening over time. Then fourth strategy is just, creating those moments for evaluation. Evaluation can't wait till tomorrow because we've already allocated time today to engage in it through the daily Scrum. So you got to just keep that cadence going. If you want to improve evaluation skills on your team, here's 3 things you can do. You can make evaluation visible. Call it out when your team begins practicing it in a new way. This can be as simple as saying something like, hey, it's really good we're evaluating, fill in the blank. This is going to help us continue to grow and get better, because naming and affirming new behaviors gives people confidence that lets them continue that behavior until it really becomes a habit. The second thing has to do with what I said about strength and evaluation, because you got to press through the soreness. Practicing something new takes more energy than just doing what you've always done. And so you want to forecast to your team, hey, these new evaluation habits, they might initially take more time or energy, but in the end, they're going to make us stronger. And then third, it's just staying in rhythm. When you begin something, you might actually need to be a little more rigid and build consistency initially. Stick to that schedule, stay in rhythm, let it become normal. You want to keep your commitments to evaluation. And one of the ways to do that is just keeping the day, the time, the location the same so that you're not having to figure that out. That kind of automates it for you. All right, we've covered transparency, we've covered inspection. Now let's talk about adaptation, which is just encouraging growth over time. So the team sees what's happening. They understand it. What are they going to do? Well, once things are visible and the team is honestly evaluating them, you almost can't hold them back from making changes, which is awesome. But there's still kind of both an art and a science involved with leading people through change. You see, the world we live in, it's not static. Change isn't optional. It's just kind of a given these days. So think back again to that example of steering a car. You don't only steer when you make turns, whether they're left or right. You steer continually. It's an ongoing activity that's required if you want to stay on course. And in the same way, adaptation, it's a long-term game of focus. And it requires those little micro corrections to actually keep going straight. Scrum's biggest advantage, I think, in adaptation is that of self-organizing teams. The teams themselves are empowered to make the change. They're the ones driving the car. That they can go, ooh, hold on, we didn't expect, but there's a lane closure, so let's get over into the other lane. They can make those adjustments as they go. They've been empowered to do that. Scrum also supports adaptation through its different events, like we've said before. So let's just kind of go back through a couple of those events again and see what role they play in adaptation. Again, the sprint planning, you might think, oh, that one's not a lot of adapting. That's at the beginning. Well, the team has already seen these PBIs before when they went through Backlog Refinement. But now they have the context of the sprint goal. They just finished all the work from the previous sprint. They see what all they need to get done, and they might actually make some adjustments at that point to their approach. Well, the daily scrum, okay, that one is just adaptation over and over again. Every day during the daily scrum, the team is essentially adapting and replanning the rest of the sprint based on what they discovered the day before. In Backlog Refinement, the team works to clarify the items in the backlog, and then the product owner, they're going to adapt the backlog. They might reprioritize some of the backlog items based on the new clarity that they've gotten. The sprint review, you're going to look and give feedback, get feedback from the stakeholders, but after that, the product owner, they may adapt what's prioritized for the next sprint based on the feedback they got. The retrospective is the team, again, evaluating how things went, but then identifying changes that they can make to work better, more efficiently as a team. Adaptation isn't always easy. So here are a couple strategies that you can use to guide your team through this change. The first strategy is to avoid the sunk cost fallacy. Have you ever known you need to make a change, but you feel this weight of like all your invested effort, and that kind of holds you back from shifting, from pivoting? Well, that's the sunk cost fallacy. Don't let your past work keep you from making the right change now. The second strategy is just to maintain current clarity. Because a lot of times we're having to adapt in a larger change that's occurring. Maybe even like something as large as a merger or reorg that you're in the middle of. And teams during times of excessive change, they need a little more help. You don't know the future, but you can at least be clear about what you do know. And so maybe during these seasons, it's adding 5 minutes to your stand-up and addressing some questions like, okay, this is what we know today. How does this affect our team? What are we going to do about it? And so you're just keeping that current clarity in front of people so it helps tether them to be able to adapt in the other areas. And the third strategy is just to engage the whole person, because it's more than just an information thing. I think the book Switch does a great job of showing how we can engage like the intellect, but also the emotions and the environment during change. Okay, we've covered a lot here as we've talked about the pillars of Scrum. If you want even more though, check out the link in the description that's Everyday Scrum. It's just a guide for everyday people to learn Scrum. I've seen how incorporating these 3 pillars, it just allows your team to be more resilient and adaptive to change. No more getting stuck, no more following expired plans. Your agile team can stay focused, actively solving problems, and grow both individually and corporately. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope it helps give you a deeper look at those 3 pillars and how they can be used. Again, down in the description, you'll see questions you can use for evaluation. You'll see links to lots of other resources. If you have questions yourself, throw those in the comments. Would love to engage with you there. If you like this content, please like and subscribe so I can keep making it. Thanks. See you next time.